So hello everyone. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So hopefully you can all see my screen. You can't let me know. But yeah, so this is an information session for those of you who are going into year 12 this year. So yeah, it's going to be short, simple. I'll try to give as much information as I can. We'll have a question session. So I have questions that I've already collated from a lot of you. So I'll answer those questions towards the end, but I'll also have a part where you guys can just ask any questions. So note down your questions as you go, and at the end, you can feel free to ask them. So a little about me. So my name is Alice. This is my little thing. So Alice Tutors is what I decided to start because of my passion for education and for learning. So I graduated last year. I did year 12 last year, and last year I was school captain at my school. I achieved a high 90s ATAR this year, which I'm very proud of, and I was actually the recipient of the following awards this year. So the one that I'm most proud of is the Peter Doherty State Award Award, which only 9 students across the state got. And that's for my extensive achievements in STEM, so in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So yeah, and I've written there, I'm really passionate about medicine, healthcare, education, and I'm hoping to go to QUT next year. So this year, actually, I keep thinking we're in 2020. So in 2022, when you guys start uni, you might see me on campus. So a little bit about me, just so you understand where I'm coming from with this whole thing. I wasn't always the top student. I've always achieved really well, particularly in year 7 to year 9. I was in an honours program at the high school that I went to, but I was shook when I got to year 10. So at my school, we started sort of year 11 work in year 10. And I remember doing chemistry, and I remember almost failing that exam. And that shook me. I was not used to sort of doing really poorly on exams. And I guess that's where sort of my journey shifted, my journey changed. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to figure out how I learn. I'm going to figure out how to ace these exams. And I'm going to figure out how to do well so that I'm in the top students always. So that sort of led me to studying in year 10, getting my data test. If you guys do chemistry or any science, my data test I did really bad. And so I took my data test result and I was like, okay, we're going to smash out whatever comes next. So I went from being at the very bottom in chemistry to actually topping the subject. So I finished year 10 as the top of chemistry in my school. And I finished year 10 as the top in biology. Second in legal, second in physics, yeah, and within the top in all my other subjects because I decided it's time to study and it's time to work out how to do really well. Year 11 was an interesting year, and I feel you guys have just gone through year 11, and I gather you've already started year 12 work. So it's a marathon. Yeah, it's an interesting experience, but as always, there are always people there to support you, and there are people who are going through the same thing as you. And I'm just one of those people who are here to help. So just to quickly explain this, you guys probably already know a lot of this stuff. But for us, we only did 3 assessment pieces. But for you guys, I'm thinking you guys will still do the 4 assessment pieces. You'll still do all of them, with one being external, if all things go well. And in fact, for a lot of subjects, I feel like you would rather do the 4 assessment pieces rather than just the 3, because what a lot of year 12s found was, yeah, this means we've got more time for externals, but externals were still a massive slap in the face. So for some people, they would have actually rather to get that extra assessment piece so that if that assessment piece was worth 20 marks, they were then able to get at least 18 out of 20. And for some people, the assessment they took out was actually their best assessment piece. So I'm hoping for your sake that you get all 4 and that COVID behaves and you guys are able to complete year 12 the way that it was designed to be completed, I think it'll make things a lot smoother for you. And the good thing is that there are a lot of examples. Like in my year 12 experience, I actually, in English, I have assessments that I achieved 100% in legal studies, in science, so in science subjects. So there are people who have done really amazing, and there are examples on QCAA. So you now have a lot of examples, a lot of resources. So that's a good thing for you. But on the other hand, don't think you'll be chilling. Like, I remember in some of my holidays, I was legit working my butt off because the way that education for everyone else in Queensland works is that you do 10 weeks of learning and then you go on holidays. It's like a 10-week term. Unit work in year 11 and 12 under the new system is 12 weeks of learning. So it's no longer you do a term, do an exam or assessment, and you're done. No, you can do 12 weeks of learning, so the 10 weeks in one term, and then when you come back, you still have 2 more weeks of that unit. So you could come back the first day back and you have an assignment due. So on those holidays, yes, you want to have a holiday, take a break, but depending on how much you pace yourself during the 10 weeks of that term will determine whether you will be working really hard in those 2 weeks. So think about it like, okay, a term is 10 weeks long, a unit is 12 weeks long also. What can I do to help myself so that I actually get a holiday? So keep that in mind. So you need to be resilient, you need to plan your time out well, you also need a break, but you need to keep in mind the timing is very different to everybody else in the school. When everybody else is chilling, you're going to be on exams. When everybody else is stressed, you're not going to be stressed, but you're going to make sure that you pace yourself and that you keep that time sort of schedule in mind. So I was actually quite shocked. In year 12, in my cohort, there were so many people towards the end who actually did not know what an ATAR was. So really simply, ATAR goes from 0.00 to 99.95. And it's essentially telling you where you stand with respect to everyone in the state who is ATAR eligible. So if there are 60,000 students in the state, but only 24,000 are ATAR eligible, you're scaled up against those 24,000 students. So if you get an ATAR 98.75, that means you achieved higher than 98.75% of the people who are ATAR eligible, and that places you in the top 1 to 2%. So you achieved in the top 1 to 2% in terms of your academic studies and academic results for that year. ATAR 30 and below, it's like if you get 30 and below, they just tell you get 30 and below. And essentially it's just saying, okay, you achieved within the top 70%, but you were only able to achieve higher than 30% or less of students in the state. So hopefully none of you get 30 and below. I'm hoping you all get the ATAR you really want to get. And as always, I'm here to support you guys, your teachers, your parents. Just let me know and let them know. So ATAR eligibility, I saw some questions even in the 2020 Facebook group where people were like, am I ATAR eligible? I'm scared I'm not ATAR eligible. Essentially being ATAR eligible means you do 5 general subjects, and at most schools you do 6 subjects anyway. So they schedule you into 6 subjects unless you do like a certificate, a diploma or whatnot, and they give you a spare. But you have, you need 5 subjects, and they're the subjects that actually count to your ATAR. And or if you're more of a hands-on person or you like to sort of chill a little, you can do an applied subject, which won't have any external examination component. So when everybody else is on external exams for all their subjects, you have that one subject where you don't have an external exam. But it also means that you have to ace those 4 other subjects, like ace them, like God knows how much. You have to ace them, and you have to make sure that, I know teachers say, don't talk about scaling, don't think about scaling, but from what I've seen this year, and from what I've seen from my results, the results of all my friends and people that I know, and all the connections across the whole state, scaling matters a lot. Like, there are people who aced some of their subjects, but like got worse ATARs than people who didn't. But because they did specialist maths, because they did chem, because they did methods, they got a high ATAR. But if you're already in year 12, you can't change your subjects. What I do recommend is pick the top 5 subjects, or the top 4 if you're doing an applied subject or a vet qualification, and completely understand, like, I'm going to give heaps of tips throughout this session about how you can ace those subjects, and literally figure out a formula that works for you to make sure that those subjects you do really well in. So regardless of whether you do general maths, make sure you're getting over 95 study score or a high 90s study score, so that when it does go to scaling, it won't affect you as much. But if you're just planning to just pass a subject and it's not considered a highly scaling subject, then you might get the worst end of scaling, if that makes sense. But if you have any questions, literally write your questions down, and at the end, I'll answer all your questions. And like I've noted here, you must do an English subject. One thing that was quite confusing when I was in year 12 was we all thought that literature was a sort of an additional subject. We thought it wasn't a subject you could do instead of English, but you can do English or you can do literature if it's offered at your school. So looking back in hindsight, I would have preferred to do literature because I'm more of an analytical person. I love analyzing and I love writing essays more than I would have loved to do English, because English has a lot of creative aspects. There's 2 creative pieces and 2 analytical pieces. But in literature, it's 4 analytical pieces. So talk to the people at your school, see whether literature or English is offered, and see which one works for you. Because contrary to what a lot of people thought, you can actually do one or the other. Literally, you don't have to do both. It's not like doing methods and then having to do specialist. But you must pass English. Regardless of which English you choose to do, you must pass. It doesn't have to be in your 5. So if you do 6, it doesn't have to be in your 5, but you must pass. Keep that in mind. So ISMGs, being in year 11, you would have come across ISMGs. So your ISMGs are your instrument-specific marking guides, aka your newest best friend. You must love those things like your life depends on them, and you must analyze those things when you get them. I am telling you that this is the way that I and most top students get the high marks we get. It's because we understand what's expected of us and how to get that. It's kind of like you're given an assessment piece, you've never done it before, or you did it in year 11, but it's slightly different because they're all slightly different. It's a new context. And you don't understand what they're looking for. You haven't seen what they're looking for. You're just trying to replicate what you did in year 11. You won't get the marks you're expecting unless you're lucky. So my recommendation is, once you get those ISMGs, open it up. Look at the different, because it's a criteria, but it has different criterions, and it's usually split into 4 sections, if not 3. I know for sciences, it's a 6, a 6, a 6, and a 2. And then, except for the data test, because the data test is just 1 to 10. And then I know for like English and whatnot, I know it's a 9, an 8, and I think a 7. I don't know. But you will see your instrumental specific marking guide. Look at it, say, okay, in order to get a 9 in this criterion, I need to do this. This needs to be evident in my work. Okay, what does this mean? They use really like fancy language in the criterion, but it's essentially so simple, it's so basic. Once you break it down, understand what the heck they're asking for, and trust me, your whole experience with assessment pieces will be much smoother. And I love analyzing, if that hasn't come across. So if you need any help, ISMGs are my thing. I love to look at them. Contact me, tell me, ask me, like, what does this mean? And, you know, I'm here to help out. So where should you start studying? So being real, many of you won't do this, but I recommend you start studying ASAP. Like, if you can start studying now, start now. I know some of you have actually already done your first assessment piece, like for science. I feel like some of you have already done your data test. Okay. Start studying as soon as you can and do a little. Like, even if you literally only study one small topic, start studying now, because I guarantee you, I told myself, no, I don't need to study. I got this. I'm fine. I just need to study when there's like a month, 2 months left. I can't tell you how many times I almost broke down crying because it was just overwhelming thinking about how much I had to do. Just that actual mental aspect of thinking, whoa, I have 4 weeks left and I have 4, 5, 6, I had 7 subjects. Thinking, oh my goodness, I have to study for all these subjects. I have an external exam, and for those of you doing maths and science, that's worth 50%. Just that mental load in itself is too much. So even if you just do like one thing this week, oh, you covered this in class, make sure you nail it this week, look at it again the next week, nail it, and then look at it in a month's time, nail it. And then when the external exam comes around, you're like, I got this. Just make sure you pace yourself, start studying now. It's really important for English. I cannot stress enough how important, for some people, actually, it doesn't make a difference. I know they say, oh, it doesn't matter if I read the book or not or whatnot. But from what I know from analyzing the ISMGs, from what I know from my own experience in English in year 11 and 12, and sort of my close work with like the head of the faculty of English at my school, it is in your best interest to start reading the book ASAP. Teachers will tell you this and you'll roll your eyes and you'll be like, what? I don't care. But trust me, there's like beautiful gems in the art of writing English essays or whatnot you need to do that only people who read the book will pick up. I'll give you an example. In year 12, I studied the book The Great Gatsby. And towards the end of the novel, there's a part where he talks about something about a futile search for the grave or something. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was literally such a beautiful device that brought in Christian sort of beliefs and became sort of a motif that talked about sort of the futile search for money, and that literally became the stem for my essay, which gave me a high mark. I did the same thing in year 11 when we looked at the sapphires. I noticed that they literally used the same transition at the start and at the end, and they used that to sort of show the change in the growth in character. There are little things that other people won't notice. They'll use the main quotes they'll find on Spark Notes or whatnot. But if you notice those beautiful gems because you read the book and you understood what was going on, and you look a bit deeper, you'll score those 25s out of 25s. That's how you do it. And that's how top students get those 25s out of 25s. They understand that the teacher knows the big part of the novel. Everyone knows it. Spark Notes has all the resources. Now, what is it that you're bringing to the table that's different? And I'm going to go into it a bit more in this when I get into subject-specific tips. So, a little more about what I did last year, just to give you some background. So, I did 7 subjects and 8 if you include UCAT. So, I was a really busy year 12 kid. And I was school captain, so I literally had no life for a few months. But we'll excuse that. So I did the 3 sciences, legal, English, math, modern history, but I did it under the SEE. So if you're interested in doing an SEE, you can also email me any questions you have, sort of my experience, how to get someone who knows the material, how to sort of navigate doing an SEE, because you don't have a main teacher who teaches you that subject. You're sort of in control with your learning, and you do all your assessment in one day, basically, or with languages, I think it was over 2 days. But essentially, if you have any questions, ask them at the end of the session or email me and I'll answer them. But yeah, also I was school captain, which made it so much harder. So if there are any school captains, or if you know any school captain that would like advice on how to be a good school captain, but still have the dream ATAR you want, because that is one thing you don't want to sacrifice, ask away. I am happy to answer, and I'm happy to help sort of answer questions on how to balance your workload, because my workload was quite intense. I had 7 subjects. I still had a job outside of school, and I was school captain, so ask away. Okay, now we're getting to the more sort of subject focused advice. So this is sort of my advice on how to make year 12 a much, much smoother year for you. So these are the things I wish someone told me at the start of 2020 or at the end of 2019. So for maths, so for all my maths people, doesn't matter whether you're doing mathematical methods or general maths. I did mathematical methods, but one thing I do know about both is that for people in general, if they didn't keep up with the content as well, if they didn't study, it was hard for them to. So don't think, oh, I'm in general, I'm going to chill, I'm fine. Actually, in general, is when you're going to have to work a lot harder in methods. Let me tell you why. Because in methods, if you get a 67 in methods or like a 70 in methods, that's going to scale really high. In general, if you get a 67 or a 70, that's going to not scale high. That might, in fact, actually scale down. So you want to make sure that if you're in general, you're scoring in the top marks. Because the reason why is because a lot of people who do general also do other subjects that they do amazing in. So if somebody is doing legal studies and they're getting 99, and then they do general and they're getting a 70, and most people in general are getting that, and then they look at other subjects and they scale it, general will be scaled down. So make sure that if you're doing general, you're working your butt off to stay in the top 5%. So getting 95 or above. Methods was this is from my personal experience and from what I witnessed, methods was very content heavy. Like, I was struggling to keep up myself. It was just a lot of work after work. But what I found was you had to sort of, even if you did 5 questions in one exercise and then did 5 questions in another exercise, that helped. And then come back the next week and do 5 more questions in that exercise, rather than thinking, oh my goodness, I have 50 questions in this exercise that I got to complete. Don't think like that. Don't overwhelm yourself, because the pacing itself is hard to master. So another thing is, maths, contrary to the popular belief and contrary to what I believe myself, maths isn't that hard. Your brain it's just not used to that way of thinking. Maths is so abstract. So for someone like me who I love physics and I do amazing at physics, but I don't love maths, and I do good at maths, but I don't do amazing at maths. And I figured out why. It's because in physics, you're given context. So if you're going to figure out, use a quadratic equation maybe to find the initial time in which a ball was thrown at 50 kilometers per hour in due east, that's the velocity. They've given you a problem to solve. That's maths. You're doing maths. But you have context. You know it's a ball they're throwing. You know that this is what they want you to solve. It's not abstract. You can see it. You can visualize it. But maths, when they give you a question, it's usually quite abstract. They say, this is this, solve this. So one thing that I would encourage you to do is think, okay, when I sit down in maths, do I try to figure out what's going on? Do I try to draw a diagram? Do I try to think, okay, I know this. Write down what you know. So write down, I know this. I want this. Okay, this is a diagram of what's going on. And get used to thinking that way, because the more you get used to thinking that way and the more problems you expose yourself to, the easier it's going to be in the exam. Because not everybody's born a maths genius. It's how well you train your brain, because there's this concept called neuroplasticity, and it's literally making connections in your brain. When you don't do much maths very often, and when you tell yourself, I don't like maths, your brain doesn't make those connections that it needs to make in maths. So the more maths you do and the less you tell yourself you're bad at maths, the better you'll get. And you have teachers there who want you to do well. So bother your math teachers, be inquisitive in class, ask questions, try to solve problems on your own, like literally stretch your brain. But at the same time, if you're stuck, you're stuck. You won't get anywhere unless you get the right guidance, or even worse, you'll go down the wrong path. And you might be thinking, oh, I'm solving this problem right, but you're using the wrong sort of method. And I know there are many methods in maths, but sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole and you can think I solved it, but it's the wrong answer. So, and also another thing, if you want a tutor, get a tutor that's dedicated, who actually wants to help you develop the cognitions and the skills required to do well in maths. So a lot of tutors, and I know, I think from sort of what I've seen and sort of what I've sort of watched and observed, a lot of tutors, what they'll do is they'll sit down with you and they'll take you through your maths problem, or if they have your textbook, they'll go through some questions in your textbook, but they'll never really go through a problem and show you, okay, this is my thought process, this is how I'm doing it, these are the cognitions, so sort of like the thinking that's going behind this problem, and this is how you can do it, and this is how you can apply it to multiple problems. Look into someone who's more interested in investing in your long-term skills, so that when you're in that exam, you're not relying on how you did a particular, how you memorized how to do a particular problem. Because trust me, those external exams, some of those questions were like from some other planet, because they relied on your ability to use your skills rather than how much you've memorized, if that makes sense. Okay, now English. So, like I said, if you can get access to that book, read that book, study that book. Because if you study it in your own sort of, at your own pace, if you're sitting down in your room and you're reading it, you're more likely to come across a beautiful gem that's placed right there by the author for you to exploit in your essay and literally blow your teacher's mind and have your teacher think, wow, this student is very brilliant. I didn't even pick that up. Like, that's an amazing moment. It's an empowering moment when you find something that even your teacher didn't find. I experienced that in year 11. I experienced that in year 10. I experienced that in year 12. Finding something that even your teacher couldn't pick up because you were dedicated to your studies, that's amazing. And then something that's really important in English, and something you should probably listen very close to, is developing a habit of considering why the author, whoever wrote it, may have created and or developed the characters or themes or all the aspects we look at in English in the way that they have. So like, don't just read something and then be like, oh, okay. Like if a question was like, why did Macbeth kill Banquo? Like, yes, you can answer that question very straightforwardly, but what they look for in English and what makes English hard is looking at the perspectives, looking at the attitudes, the beliefs that are associated with a particular decision made by the creator of the text. So an example I had here was, if you guys studied Macbeth, it's sort of, why did Shakespeare in Macbeth deliberately have Banquo's ghost sit in Macbeth's chair? Some of you will study Macbeth at the end of this year. So like, that's a very thing, that's one thing that a lot of people will just look at and be like, okay, the ghost sat in his chair, but why? Like, literally always ask yourself, but why? Why would Shakespeare have his ghost sit in Macbeth's seat? Not just any seat, but in Macbeth's seat. And a possible conclusion, because this is always up to the person who's analyzing, a possible conclusion could be like, maybe it's saying something about Banquo's children being the rightful heirs despite his death. And if once you study Macbeth, you'll understand why. That's a possible conclusion. But that's just giving you an idea of how, if you constantly question why something might be the way that it is, and if you constantly try and put yourself in the place of the creator and think, okay, this creator wrote this in 1850, whatever. Why did they write it? Why did they choose to say this? Kind of thing. Okay, sciences. So a lot of you are probably very interested in the sciences. So the sciences are sort of my area of expertise as well. Like, they're what I did mostly. So I've broken it down into bio, chem, and physics. So for bio, it's a lot of study. There's a lot of content. And if you don't study as you go, or if you're not really good at cramming and studying massive content in a short period of time, I would recommend that you study as you go. So what I noticed is that, like, I don't understand why they did this, but units 3 and 4 is mainly focused on ecology, evolution, and a little of DNA. But even the DNA, they link it quite well with evolution. So make sure you understand your ecology from like top to bottom, and make sure you understand your evolution very well, because even a DNA question, like, because of how seamlessly it links with evolution, there might be a question like on Hox genes, like you'll know that later when you study, but that links very well with macroevolution in evolution. So keep that in mind. If you want top marks, consider those links. Chemistry, oh my goodness, you need to you need to make practice problems your best friend, because some chemistry questions were a little unpredictable. That chemistry exam, it shook me. It shook almost everyone across the state, even the top students. Like, we were shook because we weren't expecting questions like that. So in order to avoid that panic and that shock and sort of that feeling of anxiety, make sure you expose yourself to as many practice problems as you can. And for student experiments, make sure you understand what to expect before you do them. Like, they can go very wrong, like very easily, very quickly. And when they go very wrong and you don't understand how to manipulate your data, like teachers will tell you not to manipulate your data, but a lot of students do. But if you don't know how to go about and make sure that your assessment can be written in a way that will allow you to get the maximum marks, make sure you pick a student experiment you know will not fail. Physics, okay. The data booklet is your best friend. I know in the exam, the final exam, there are questions I completely forgot which formulas to use for or how to use them. But the data booklet, if you understand how to navigate it, how to use it, it will save your butt in a lot of circumstances. Like, if you forget that MA equals MG and MA equals MG sine theta, therefore that's how you can find the angle. It's literally in the data book. Like, you just got to remember the small little tiny tricks. So understand your data book, and trust me, learn how to manipulate equations without having values in them, rearranging your equations and finding different relationships, and physics will be a whole lot easier when it comes to the math side. Okay, so that's essentially the sort of the chunk of my advice, but there's a little more. So I've decided that sort of to help you guys out, I'm going to keep sort of my Instagram account active, and I'm going to post little things here and there every week. So stay connected on there, and you might find things that I haven't mentioned here posted all throughout the year as you guys go through year 12. I also have my email posted up here, so you feel free to note that down. And if you have any extensive questions, then write me an email and I'll get back to you in 1 to 3 days, because I'm going to be starting uni this year, so I'm going to have to sort of allow myself that time to do it. But just any subject related questions, general year 12 questions, if you want to be motivated, because I know I lacked motivation throughout that year when I did year 12, just ask away, email me. And I've also decided that I'm going to start like an Alice Tutors group, like an email group. So when I have like sort of special content, like notes that I have, because I have so many notes. I have, like, for legal studies alone, I have 20,000 words of notes that are summarized, like the whole syllabus. I have that for chem, I have that for bio. So there are little sweet things that I can send through. So if you want to join my Alice Tutors group where I can email that stuff out, let me know. And another thing I can do is I can help you. So if like I can support you on your journey. If you want sort of more in-depth sort of advice, more in-depth support, let me know. So this is just sort of explaining what I do. So sort of like my aim is to sort of create a dedicated study plan. So what I think a lot of tutors don't do is they don't actually see, okay, well, what's this person's intention? Where do they want to do? Like, yes, they want to do well, but how well? And sort of where are they going? So one thing I want to do is sort of sit down and talk to the person and be, okay, so what do you want to do? Yes, you want to do well. Which subjects? And sort of cater to the syllabus. Look at the Queensland syllabus for each of your subjects, because that's what I did in year 12. And then see, okay, we're going to cover this material, this session, this material, this session. So by the time you literally get to the end of year 12, you're all set. Like, you have nothing to worry about. You just have to review everything. Another thing is I'm going to have sort of like a phone. So if you guys have any questions, you'll have my number. You can sort of contact me, text me. If you're struggling with a particular problem, My phone number will be available to you. Yeah, I've gone through year 12. I know the struggles of year 12. I know how hard it can get. I know how overwhelming it can get, but I also know how to do it really well. So if you have any questions, if you want to sort of be part of that and be part of making 2021 an awesome year for you, get into your dream course, let me know. And so we're up to the question part. So these are the questions that were submitted before the session. So someone asked, how often should I study? And to be honest, that depends on the subjects you do. And it also depends on how you study. Somebody might only need 15 minutes to get a topic down pat, and someone might need an hour. So sit down in class and be like, okay, in chemistry we covered this, in bio we covered this, okay, did I understand this? And if you did, only spend 5 minutes reviewing it, and then maybe spend another 10 minutes on the weekend. And then just always continuously check up and make sure you remember it. But if something in maths was so mind-boggling, spend an hour doing it. Just make sure you have time, like at least an hour for each subject out of school that you're dedicating to studying. So if you do 6 subjects, make sure you have at least 6 hours outside of school studying, whether that's on the weekend mainly, or in the afternoons after school, or in the mornings. Work out when you work best and just cater to that. So how to juggle all the subjects? Okay, this is an interesting question. So since I did 7 subjects, I was actually, I had some classes in the morning before school, some after school, some during school. And essentially what I did is I just made sure that I wrote down what I needed to do. If I had homework, I wrote it down. Doesn't mean I checked it all the time, but I made sure I wrote it down. I made sure I had sort of everything was written down, everything was planned out. I created a checklist of all the things I needed to do. And if you do that, if you take if you rely less on your mental ability to sort of take note of what you need to do or what you need to get done, it will help you sort of pace yourself and help you juggle everything, if that makes sense. Okay, to what extent does scaling affect your grades? Okay, we didn't actually get a scaling report. I think the scaling report gets published very soon, but the scaling report will show you how subjects were scaled. But from what I've seen, a lot of people in chemistry, methods, physics, they were scaled really high. Like those subjects were scaled really high. Like media, art, those subjects were unfortunately scaled down from what I've noticed from other people. So I guess don't think too deeply and be like, oh my goodness, I'm in art. I'm not going to do well. Don't think like that. Think, okay, I'm in art. I love this subject. That's why I'm in it. I'm going to ace it because I'm going to study hard. And if you ace it, nobody can take that away from you, and it will be reflected in your ATAR. But if you just do good at it, scaling might just not be the best thing for your ATAR. So they did affect the grades in chemistry. Biology, I don't think not so much, but chemistry and methods, a lot. Was your 12 chemistry similar to 11 chemistry? Okay. There were some aspects of year 11 chemistry that were evident in year 12 chemistry, like the chromatography techniques or analytical techniques, but a lot of year 12 chemistry was organic chem. And it was also equilibrium. What they did do in our exam is they actually combined the topics. Oh, they were so evil, they combined the topics. So that's another thing. In your external exams, don't think, oh, they're going to be nice and they're going to separate topics and they're going to be like, okay, this is a question from Unit 3, this is a question from Unit 4. No. In some subjects, they were so brutal in that they didn't even test some content in Unit 4 or Unit 3, or they purposely combined topics. Like they combined equilibria and organic chem content, like reaction pathways, which is really brutal. But just be expecting the worst and study everything and make sure that you're comfortable with everything. But yeah, it does get more complex and it does feel a little more heavier because organic chem is very new. In year 11 chemistry, I don't feel like you don't do much that is new. In year 12 chem, you do a lot more that is new to you. Is there a way you can estimate? No. The ATAR I got was not the ATAR I was expecting. Sort of like, I would not worry about estimating your ATAR. What I would worry about is getting the highest study score you can get. So if you right now have already done your data test or whatever, your first assessment, and it was weighted out of 20 or out of 10, and you got like an 18 out of 20, you know that the highest you can get now is 98. Try to maintain that 98. Try your best to just get the highest you can get, and don't worry about estimating your ATAR, because the more you worry about estimating your ATAR, the more time you spend on something that's not actually going to help your ATAR. Focus on what's going to actually help your ATAR. What are the expected marks? Okay. My general tip is literally try to ace every possible opportunity you can. Like, try to get the top mark you can in every single assessment piece. Every single assessment piece, you only get 4. Those 4 opportunities are the only opportunities you have to get the highest grade you can. And once you lose that opportunity, it's gone. So if that assignment was out of 20 and you got a 10 because you weren't bothered to start the assessment when you got it, tough luck, you just lost 10 marks. You just lost 10 marks you didn't need to lose. So go in with that attitude and be like, you know what? I'm going to smash this. I'm going to use every possible opportunity to get the best possible grade that I can. And that will help you across all your subjects, regardless of what subjects you do. So external exam. I don't know if you guys saw all those videos that went across TikTok, Instagram, but some of the external exams were dodgy in the sense that they did their best to cover only a small amount of the syllabus. They literally tested our patience, because I know for legal studies, we studied international law, and so we looked at international treaties. None of those treaties were assessed. Only one, and that wasn't even an actual treaty, and that was in the extended response. Like, there were 5 questions on that exam, 1 extended and 4 short, and it was out of 34, but nothing on international law treaties. And that is what we spent the bulk of Unit 3 studying. So go in expecting that they could test you on very specific things in the syllabus, or they can test you on a wide range. In physics, I think physics was the best exam, because physics was a little bit of everything, and it was very well structured in terms of the mark allocations. Chemistry was the worst. Chemistry, what they did for the second half of our exam, they actually had, it was worth 60 marks, that part, 3 questions. 3 questions worth 60 marks. It was 20 marks for each question, and there were follow-up questions. So if you couldn't remember the equation for the, fermentation of glucose, if you couldn't remember it, you couldn't balance it. Therefore, you couldn't do all the other questions that followed. So you had to make up something to sort of get, if you're in that situation, I wouldn't leave the following questions. I would sort of make up an equation and then do the steps that I needed to follow. But if you couldn't do it, you lost a lot of marks. That's 20 marks that are at risk. So keep that in mind. Like, they might change it and make it better for you guys, but keep in mind that some exams are not written in your favor. So make sure you understand everything, and make sure you can answer questions to the best of your ability, because these exams are not all written in your favor. Your Unit 1 and 2 exams are much more in your favor than your Units 3 and 4 exams. And then the last question that was answered before the session was if there were any tips on how to manage time during an exam. I personally had a handheld watch at my desk, so I could pace myself. What I did was, for written pieces, obviously write the questions that are worth more for some people. Like in history, write the synthesis question first, then go and do your 1-2 mark questions. For legal studies, Some people like to write the extended response question first, and that would apply to economics, accounting, business, which have an extended response component. For science, for me, it was honestly do your multiple choice first, because multiple choice, at least even if you don't feel like you're right, you got 50% chance if you nailed it down to 2, then you're sort of on a roll. You feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. But if you start with your short response, you might find yourself in a rut and you might sort of lose that confidence. So sort of gain that momentum by doing your easier questions first, or the questions that require a bit more time depending on the subject, and get on a roll, and you'll be able to sort of keep your eye on the clock, and you'll be fine. Trust me, you'll be fine in terms of time management.
So we've reached the end of this session. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching. Even though you couldn't come in for the actual session, it's okay. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was of benefit to you. If there are any further questions, don't hesitate to email me at alicetutors0@gmail.com, or check out the Instagram page. I'll be updating it regularly. And yeah, I wish you all the best this year. I'm here to help. There's so many people here to help. And yeah, all the best. And if you're going to QUT, I'm going there, I found out yesterday. So I might catch you there in 2022. So work hard, follow your dreams, and get that true later. Thanks. Bye.